Good morning. On Saturday, I had the privilege of attending and actually speaking at a group called Putting People First. And they're trying right now to bring awareness to the fact that UPMC Pinnacle, a large corporation and health insurance company that owns a hospital here in Lancaster City, is closing that hospital when they only just bought it in 2017. It's obvious to all of us that have a brain that they bought it with the intention of selling it. And our city leaders, our politicians, they agreed to let them buy this. And I'm going to get into more of what happened at that meeting. And some of you have already seen the fact that it was recorded. So my speech is actually on my timeline and on Political Polly right here. But I want to talk about city government and city residents and our rights. I am very upset right now for a couple reasons. One is I am a homeowner of a city house. I live in the house that I was actually born in and my mother grew up in. My grandfather bought this house in the 1940s for like $8,000. And we've lived here. My family has lived in this house since the 1940s, and we have never had, knock on wood, we've never had a gas leak, we've never had a fire, we've never had any kind of major issue, okay? And I mean, I lived here when we had little fuses in the basement and blah, blah, blah. We've never had any kind of an issue. And yet now, the city of Lancaster is forcing me to allow a contractor I have never heard of before, something Gridiron or something. They're saying I must allow them into my home next month to replace my water meter. Now, they start out saying it's okay, it's free, but every homeowner has to do it. But it's free. Well, no, see, it's not. Because if they come in here to put this new water meter in my basement and my pipes aren't compatible with the new water meter, then those pipes need to be replaced, and guess who's going to have to pay for that? Me. And guess what? You don't have to do it. You're an American citizen. You have rights. But if you don't do it, we're going to turn your water off. You won't have any water in your house. Nice, right? Nice. I've talked a lot about the fact that in September, we paid $6,000 because we found that our outside electric box was not caulked and done properly, and water was leaking down and was actually harming our breaker box. We paid $6,000 to a company here in Lancaster, Lowry Services, to completely redo the outside box and put new breaker box in. What we did not know at the time was that they were actually changing the electrical grid of our home. They didn't tell us, but we found out about it when our microwave in the kitchen started blowing the fuse. It's happened 3 times now. It just happened again on Sunday. And I was always told that every time a breaker blows, it can damage the outlet. So the second time it happened, I called Lowry Services, and they sent this guy out, and he said, oh, no, that's what it's supposed to do. Because of the city code, you're not allowed to have your microwave in your kitchen on its own breaker, like it had been for 35 years without ever being a problem. Until we spent $6,000 to upgrade our electric, I never had a breaker in the kitchen blow. Not one time. Nada. Never. Nothing. And what pisses me off more is they didn't tell us when they did the work in September. They didn't say that your microwave is no longer on its own line and you may want to either move it because they already told us to put the proper kind of electric in there that the city would approve of. They'd have to rip up my kitchen. It's very hard to do, and it would be expensive. Now, look, I already spent $6,000. And I'm not spending one fucking dollar more. You know what I might do, though? I have lots of friends who are electricians. And I might just have them come back and fucking put the damn microwave back the way it was. Right now, the microwave is plugged in to its own circuit breaker. But in the summer, that is the circuit breaker. And I know it's its own circuit breaker because there's a 15,000 BTU air conditioner that's plugged into that circuit in the summer. Okay? Now, in the summer, we won't be able to use the air conditioner and the microwave at the same time, or even have them plugged in at the same time. So I don't know what we're going to do at this point. There is a slight chance, for full disclosure, that the microwave is going bad, which is why we moved it on Sunday. We said, let's make sure we put it on its own breaker that we know is a designated breaker. It's a 220 line. Make sure, and if it blows again, it's the microwave. However, and the electricians who did this upgrade for $6,000 should have known this. If you Google a microwave, they tell you it should be on its own designated breaker. So I'm a little upset about that. I'm upset that I had to pay $300 for these new special outlets in my kitchen because the outlets are, I don't know, from here to the sink. And oh, if you're mixing a batter and you drop your mixer in the batter, you could be electrocuted. I'm 54 years old. I never did that. Who does that? Who drops their freaking electric mixer into batter? Who does that? Oh, I'm mixing up mashed potatoes. Oops, boom. That doesn't happen. But the city says I have to have these outlets if they're near a water source. You know where the one is? Where the one outlet is? The sink's here. The other outlet I paid $100 for is on the other side of the wall in the kitchen. It's not anywhere close to a water source, but we had to have the $100 outlet because it's in the kitchen. People blowing their hair. Who blow dries your hair over a sink full of water? I don't even blow dry my hair. I have naturally curly hair. I don't need a blow dryer. I don't even own a blow dryer. But you gotta have the special $100 outlet just in case. It's bullshit. And the point of this, when I talk about the forum I went to over the weekend, is that this group put people first. And there's going to be a link to this on my Facebook page, Political Paula, and my timeline, Paula Kling Luciano, a link to join this group. Is that UPMC Pinnacle is a corporation, and for some reason, they don't have to adhere to all the different things that us residents have to do. The building that used to be St. Joseph's Hospital, then it became Lancaster Regional Hospital. It has been a hospital in our city for over 100 years. 100 and I think 30 years. It's always been a hospital. In 2017, UPMC Pinnacle comes in. They buy it. They get lots of tax breaks because they say they're not profit. They don't pay real estate tax on it. I wonder why my real estate taxes went up recently. But in 2018, just 1 year after they own this hospital, they decide they're going to sell it. They're not going to sell it to a group of doctors that are going to keep it a hospital. They just want to unload it. It's not profitable. It's falling apart. They don't want to do the renovations to get it up to code like us city residents who own our homes here have to do. They don't want to do that. So they're laying off a bunch of people. They're moving people to Lidditz. And by the way, if you don't know Lancaster City and Lidditz, it's like a different country. If you live in the city and you don't drive, and many of us who live in the city don't drive, you're not going to walk to Lidditz. It's not just a hop, skip, and a jump. In fact, I have to check this out, but UPMC is saying it's 7 miles. No, Park City, if you know the area, is 7 miles from my house. No way in hell. Heart of Lancaster in Lidditz is 7 miles from my house. It's more like maybe 12 miles. And on this congested 2-lane highway you have to take to get there, it's going to take you a hell of a lot longer through the light cycles and all that. Believe me, it will take you 25 minutes to get from Lancaster City to this Lidditz hospital. Where if you live in the city, you go to Lancaster Regional, even in traffic, it's a 4-minute drive. It's a big difference when time is of the essence. If you're having a heart attack or delivering a baby, you're in labor. We do have another hospital, a crowded hospital. And I know this from experience. Lancaster General Hospital, first of all, I definitely don't want my husband or myself to be a patient there for personal reasons. My mother died there. I believe she was killed there by malpractice. So it scares me terribly to think of my husband being a patient in that hospital or me. We always took great comfort that we had Lancaster Regional, because that's the hospital we were going to go to if we needed surgery or tests or, an emergency. I know for a fact the LGH emergency room is a real piece of work, because I took my best friend, my sissy, there in 2002 when her gallbladder was collapsed. She was feverish. She had sepsis. And we sat in that waiting room in 2002 while there still was a second hospital choice. And I saw a man next to us bleeding out, and the staff at that emergency room gave him a roll of paper towels, and they weren't Bounty, and said, "We'll be with you shortly." And he's wrapping paper towels as he's bleeding out and waiting. As my sissy and I waited and waited, and add insult to injury, when she was seen at LGH emergency room, well, yes, you're septic, we need to get you on antibiotics, and we're going to do gallbladder surgery tomorrow, and oh, by the way, we don't have a bed for you. We got to the emergency room at LGH around, 6:30 at night. At midnight, she still didn't have a bed. She was in the emergency room on a gurney waiting for a bed while she was feverish, in pain, and septic. And she finally got a bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. Like 6-7 hours later. What do you think's going to happen now with only one hospital in a city that is growing by leaps and bounds? Everybody wants to live in the city. Properties are on the rise. Try to afford a house in Lancaster City anymore. Believe me, it's no $8,000 like my grandfather paid. People who want to stay in the city are seeing our property and school taxes triple. Oh, if you want to sell your house, it's awesome. But I know people who want to live in the city who make good money and they can't afford to find a house here. And now there's only one hospital. One hospital to service all these people. And all the people who are coming in for the ballpark and the fancy restaurants that are opening up and the boutique stores that are opening up. Guess what? Do you know how much it costs to go to a baseball game? Oh, the residents have to deal with the fireworks and the noise and the traffic and the parking issues and the foot traffic. We got to deal with that shit, but we can't afford to take our families to a baseball game. My God, a hot dog and a beer will cost you $20. Try taking 3 or 4 kids to a baseball game here in Lancaster City. You can't afford it. You know who can afford it? The people out in the suburbs, which is why the park was built. To bring people from the suburbs into the city. We got this fancy-ass, pansy restaurant, this New York-style restaurant on the corner about 2 blocks from my house. In order for me and my husband to eat there, we better get our credit card out and expect to spend $250 to $300 for 2 people. And the portions are this big. Oh, there's your lobster tail. Oh, here's your vegetable. Here's a little bit of sorbet for you, palate cleanser. Are you kidding me right now? The only good thing about that restaurant is they pay taxes, at least. They're not for profit. But no resident can go to that restaurant. We can't afford that in a working city. We're working people in Lancaster. Our doctors don't live in Lancaster. Find a doctor and let me know if they live in Lancaster City. I'll tell you, they probably don't. They live out in the burbs with their 5 bathrooms and 8 bedrooms and 2-car garages and a pool in the backyard and a tennis court. That's how our doctors live. That's how the UPMC Pinnacle executives live. The people who pay their salaries, the patients who go to the hospitals, we don't live like they do. We don't. They live off of our suffering. Every time they play tennis on their little tennis court, or they get their maid to clean their 5 bathrooms, that's our money. That's our suffering that bought them that kind of luxury. Put people first. It was interesting to me is I didn't know a lot about the group except that we had this in common, that we are both very angry with UPMC Pinnacle for closing Lancaster Regional. But what was so poignant about the meeting was it isn't just about closing the hospital. It's what the hospital meant to so many in our community. I've told you often that my husband and I are so lucky. For as long as we've known each other, neither one of us has ever been in the hospital or been in the emergency room. We're blessed. But as we get older, we worry that things are going to start happening. And we do want the choice. We don't want the only choice to be LGH because it's the closest hospital. We always took comfort that we had Lancaster Regional. We wanted the choice. And you know, it's funny that UPMC is allowed by the city to sell this hospital and have it torn down when if you are a resident of this city and you own a historical home, a home that is deemed historical, the city, you can't paint your house. You can't put new windows in your house. You have to talk to the Historical Society and the city will tell you what kind of windows you can put in. My father-in-law had to deal with it with his store downtown. He's not allowed to just do anything to his store. He has to talk to the city first. And yet this big corporation, UPMC Pinnacle, is allowed to buy this hospital in 2017 and 14 months later decide to close it. Kick everybody to the curb. The residents who depend on it for health care, they can just drive 7 miles or 8 miles or however long it takes. They can go to our big facility in Lidditz. They don't care. And that's the problem right there. You know, we probably can't force the city to stop UPMC from selling something they own. If I want to sell my house, the city can't stop me from selling it. But in the future, what I hope will happen is if some big-ass corporation is going to come into our city, we need to know more about them. Turns out UPMC Pinnacle is famous for this, and they're basically like that Independence Day movie where the aliens were scouring all the planets, sucking all the elements out, and then moving on. That's what UPMC Pinnacle does. They come into a town, they buy up hospitals, they decide which one's more valuable, and they consolidate them. And that means people are out of work, And it means that residents have less choices in where they go for medical care. They buy up the doctor's practices. They scour our resources like parasites. And then they move on. Right now, a gentleman spoke at the meeting Saturday saying that in Philadelphia, UPMC Pinnacle is starting to look to buy up hospitals and doctors' practices. They're moving on. They took care of Lancaster, and they're moving on. God help you if they come to your town. So going forward, I do believe that it's up to the residents, the citizens, the taxpayers of any community to know if a large corporation like a UPMC Pinnacle is starting to buy up assets in your community. Something as important as hospitals, your family doctor's practice. I got to tell you, UPMC Pinnacle bought my husband's family practice, and we have a new doctor now. They destroyed it. They ruined their reputation. Corporations have no business dictating how much time we can spend with our doctor or where we can go for medical care and emergency treatment in our community. They have no business doing that. In the future, I hope that our city council will be vigilant. Put it in a contract. If you buy a hospital or a doctor's practice in this community, you sign a paper. You cannot sell it unless you sell it and keep it as it was when you bought it. In other words, UPMC, you can sell Lancaster Regional Hospital, but it has to stay a hospital. We are terrified right now that what we're going to end up getting is the hospital's going to be torn down, and we're going to have high-rise condos that nobody in the community can afford. And then on the bottom, fancy markets selling food that we've never heard of, or boutiques that we can't even afford to buy a bar of soap in. Because that's how F&M College did it. They built all these stores and restaurants, and I can't even go into those stores and shop. It's too expensive. Go to a restaurant in Lancaster. You will spend $100 for 2 people because the food is overpriced. The alcohol is outrageous. $12 for a glass of wine. I can get a bottle of wine at the liquor store and get 4 glasses out of it for $9.99. And it's decent. It's called Behringer's White Zinfandel, the creme de la creme. I go to a restaurant and order White Zinfandel. They charge me $12 a glass. Are you kidding me? You know, it's great that our city's booming. It's awesome that I can walk to nice restaurants and have a nice meal. But my God in heaven, I'm going to pay for it. It's so expensive. This is a working class community. Yes, we work. We have all different ethnicities, all different races living in peace. We have a nice, peaceful city. We do. We all get along for the most part. Do we have our share of crime? Yeah, but nothing like some of these other places. We respect our neighbors. We love our neighbors. We love our city. But I believe that everyone in this city has the right to equal health care. Affordable, available health care at their choosing. They shouldn't be forced to go to LGH. They shouldn't be forced to hire a taxi to take them to Lidditz for health care. And they certainly shouldn't be forced to only have 15 minutes a year with their doctor because UPMC Pinnacle tells doctors they can only do that because it's quantity, not quality, that matters anymore. I was very privileged to speak on Saturday. I hope you will watch my speech. Some of it made it on the news, actually, and I'm very proud of that as well. And I want to thank Tammy and Jimmy and all the wonderful people, Ann, who I met. And I got some new friends. They're liking my page, and so I hope you guys will see this show and know that I am with you 150% and that you are right in that nothing gets done if citizens don't fight back. And I also want to thank Janet Diaz is the only city council person. Everybody was invited. The mayor was invited. Janet Diaz showed up. She sat there. She listened. UPMC Pinnacle will not face us. They will not answer our questions directly. So they hid behind their big corporate brouhaha. And nobody else from the city politicians showed up at the meeting on Saturday except for Janet Diaz. And I really appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you and having a relationship with you in the future. So I'm anxious to see comments. For those of you who aren't familiar with Lancaster, please, this affects you too. It affects all of you. I know I have a lot of viewers that don't live in my town. But be careful, because UPMC Pinnacle has done their damage in Lancaster, and they may be coming for you next. Political Paula, out.